5-minute warning.
When have we ever been like there?
3 minutes.
What? No thanks to me? Yeah. Hey, where'd you park?
Right there. No?
2-minute warning. 2 minutes. Hear me?
So, guess what? What else? Lucas's family is having another party tonight at NDG. So, if you want to go to that.
90 seconds. 90-second warning.
Hey, man.
Oh, perfect.
All right.
Just wanted to make sure I didn't lose you again.
Oh, no. We're fine. 1 second.
1 second?
No. These headsets always mess up my hair.
Oh, no. Not me. My hair is like unflappable.
All right. So if you want to use the computer,
Hello, Facebook Live viewers.
this is the one that you're going to use.
All right.
All right.
1 minute warning.
All right, buddy.
I do that out of boredom more than anything.
Okay.
I trust you guys.
Yeah, we're relatively responsible people. How do we get rid of this thing that's on the screen?
Don't you hit cancel?
There's no, like, it just comes back. There's no cancel. Cancel is not an option.
We've been live for 4 minutes.
Okay. I don't know. I got to do work.
Yep.
Are these computers the same? No, this one's like bigger or something.
30.
Three, two, one. All right. Welcome to a new edition of Hockey Primetime. Happy Saturday to ya. It's the best day of the week. Certainly one of the best days. It's one of the top 5 best days of the week, Saturday, I think. And one of the reasons for that is that it's a great day for hockey. My name's Conor McKenna. This is Hockey Primetime. We're on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio. We're also streaming live at hockeyprimetime.com and on Facebook Live. Hello to all our Facebook Live viewers. We have 2 right now, Laura. 6! We got 6 viewers.
I think you need to stop watching the viewers because it always seems like less than it is, and then after I get home, it'll be like, 1,000 people watched our video.
Right. Nice. All right.
People are tuning in. They like us.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you, friends, and thanks for checking us out. And feel free to go and do so at Hockey Primetime on Twitter or Hockey Primetime Facebook page. That's Laura Saba. She's the producer of the show. My name's Conor McKenna. I am the host, and we're with you until 7 o'clock tonight. It's 2 hours of nonstop hockey talk with occasional interruptions to talk about, random pop culture happenings or maybe like what to have for dinner tonight, stuff like that. We're here in Montreal. We're in the Hockey Primetime studio, so you can actually see where the magic happens on our Facebook Live page. If you're into that type of thing. And I guess we're on Periscope too. So is that 2 different things?
Yes.
Separate.
Yes.
Periscope.
Facebook Live is the Facebook Live, and then Periscope you would consider it as like Twitter Live. Like they've joined up with Twitter. I think Twitter owns it or Periscope owns Twitter or something like that.
All right, great. So there you go. So we're streaming live all over the place. We got a lot of viewers, and we are very, very pleased that you've made us a part of your listening choice today. Very astute on your part. So, a big one tonight. This is, we're in Montreal here, and the Leafs are in town to take on the Canadiens. The Leafs came flying out of the gates. The Canadiens, not so much. But it is Saturday night. It's hockey night in Canada. It's Montreal-Toronto for the first time this year. And the rivalry is renewed. The rivalry, it's amazing how this is still a rivalry, considering the way that it's gone for the last couple of years. But the Leafs have been trending upwards. The Canadiens have been trending downwards. And I think we're going to see this season, if it truly is the shift, if the shift happens, if the Leafs become a 100-point, maybe even a division-winning team, and that would mean the Canadiens would fall out of that category, or fall out maybe potentially as being one of the top teams in the Atlantic Division. Still a long way to go. But are you feeling the buzz? The Habs Leafs buzz? Does it feel like a Habs Leafs Saturday to you?
It feels like dread.
Does it?
I am not ready to give up the unbeaten streak as a Canadiens fan. I mean, I've become more impartial over the years, but I'm still a Canadiens fan at heart.
Okay.
And I'm not ready yet for that streak to be broken. I'm not ready. I mean, you and I were talking. We've talked on all season about how the Leafs fans are getting really excited, and it's starting to get a little bit too loud. It's great for the league. It's great for us, but at the same time, I'm not ready to deal with the Leafs fans tomorrow morning, is what I'm going to say.
Well, we'll say, it's not going to be easy. And the streak Laura refers to, Montreal has beaten Toronto 16 consecutive games going back a couple of regular seasons. So, we've seen some Toronto wins in preseason or in games that don't count. But in the games that actually count in the standings, Montreal's dominated the Leafs. And it is going to come to an end at some point. The question is when. But I got to say that I find myself, as a hockey fan, and as a fan of entertaining, pleasing to the eye hockey, an organization that really seems to have its head on straight and seems to be headed in the right direction, that I'm cheering for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I want to see them succeed. I want to see that model be successful. The model of Brendan Shanahan surrounding himself by a lot of really smart hockey people, listening to all of their inputs, getting a veteran hockey man to be his general manager, but a really nice sort of council of advisors at every level there, and to do things the right way. And yeah, it helps when you've got an Austin Matthews who looks more and more like a superstar player. And you've also got guys like Mitch Marner, William Nylander, Morgan Riley, Jake Gardiner, who I know some people have mixed feelings about. I'm a big fan of the work that Jake Gardiner does for the blue line, for the Toronto Maple Leafs blue line. That is an organization that I really do. I like the way that they've done it. I think that they've done it the right way. And if they're successful, because the NHL is a copycat league, I think we'll see other teams sort of follow suit. I must say that I'm not as impressed by the job that Marc Bergevin has done at the helm of the Montreal Canadiens organization at all. And in fact, I would say that it's almost like an opposite type situation to what we've seen here in Montreal, where there's a couple of high draft picks on this team as well. One of them might be a healthy scratch tonight, or he might just be a scratch, and Alex Galchenyuk, who's a number 3 overall pick a couple of years back, and Carey Price is going to be starting this game. He's a number 5 overall pick, what seems like a lifetime ago. When was that? 2005, right? 2005. 12 years ago. I feel old when I think about stuff like this. Yeah, the buzz, though, I don't feel it. I don't feel the Montreal-Toronto, the hockey buzz. I think the buzz is there in Toronto because people are excited about this team. I have never, and I know I've referred to this before, I have never seen Canadiens fans as negative and unexcited about their team as they are right now. The second anything goes wrong, the knives come out. Everybody's ready to pounce. It really is. It's a unique situation that I can't recall. And I guess it's sort of amplified by social media, but we're hearing things like there are still tickets available for this Toronto-Montreal game on a Saturday night. And I'm sure they'll get snapped up. Most likely it will get snapped up by Leafs fans, if anything. Excuse me, just had to clear my throat there. But it just doesn't, I don't feel the buzz and all the goodwill anytime something good happens to the Canadiens. So, and it feels like a while, but last year they did well. They were a 100-point team again, right? And everybody, it seemed to me, not everybody, but a lot of people, I'd say the majority of fans, the first sign of trouble, they jump off the bandwagon. So say the Canadiens win tonight and then they go out west. I don't think this is going to happen. They've got a Western swing next week. They've got San Jose, Los Angeles, and then they've got the Anaheim Ducks, I think. Anyway, whatever. They play those 3 teams. I'm not sure what order they play them in.
I will look that up.
It doesn't matter. It's really not an important detail here. But let's just say they win all those games.
Right.
They come back and they win their next game back home after the road trip. 5-game winning streak. Even if people start to feel positive about this team again, I just get the feeling that as soon as they lose 2 games, at some point, the winning streak ends, they lose 2 games, everybody is going to be out panicking and negative again. It's not, I don't think panicking is the right word. I really don't. But
is it more that they've given up, do you think?
I don't know if complacency is the word. It's whatever the word is, it's a bad word if you're Jeff Molson and the ownership group of the Canadiens.
It's like a loss of interest, which is something that you never want.
And that's it. Is it just seems like, look, Montreal's a great town. And I think that there's a lot of people that are sort of just like, you know what, I'm going to do something else.
Right. And the tickets are very expensive. Like if you're a Canadiens fan, in the last few years, there have been a lot of complaints that, most average fans have been priced out of games. And if you want to keep charging those prices, if you want to keep raising prices for your season ticket holders, you really have to have a product that's worth looking and worth watching. And nobody's going to be paying those kind of prices for a team that is not scoring and is not winning games. And I think that that's a formula that we always thought that we were immune to in Montreal because, the Canadiens have sold out every single game for so many years.
I think that ended a while ago, though.
Yeah,
they don't announce it anymore. I know that. Like they stopped announcing it a couple of years ago.
So it's probably, it probably ended a while ago, but it used to be that you could count on people to go to games even when the team was bad, even when the team didn't make the playoffs or missed it the last second or made it or backed into the playoffs. You could count on people paying for tickets and going to games, buying concessions. And that's something that right now the team, I guess the team is realizing, and it could even be the Toronto effect where they've used the fans' goodwill for so many years, and they've put into place a team that looks promising for years to come, and it's a model that's working. And I feel like that could be something that the Canadiens fans are saying, well, they did that over there. A situation that seemed so hopeless was turned around in a couple of years. And so
it was a long time.
It took a long time.
It's been a long time for the Leafs.
But
to be fair,
it's something where fans might be saying, well, if I'm going to be paying those kinds of prices that they're paying, I really want to see a team that I can have faith in.
Well, and you know what? I think that people don't have enough faith in this team. I'll stand by it. I think they're a playoff team. I don't know if they win the division, but I think they probably finish second or maybe third. And they're not as bad as their 4 goals in 4 games that they've scored so far.
Right,
you know?
and they're shooting at an absurdly low percentage, and that's something that isn't sustainable, which I'm sure you've talked about ad nauseum. But yeah, it is. It's a very low percentage, and I guess one of those things. It's one of those things where things have to click, and the forward group is actually really good. We've talked a lot about the defense and how they've let a lot of players go that they might have. They should have kept or given more chances to. But at the same time, like I think that the scoring is going to come. The problem is going to be the transition game and playing against teams that are far better, far stronger.
Well, that's. I mean, you're watching. I'm watching games. Last night was it 2 nights ago that I was watching Pittsburgh Columbus and not Pittsburgh Columbus. Was it Pittsburgh Tampa?
It was Pittsburgh Tampa. It was an amazing game.
And they're just. These guys are flying around out there. And I just find myself thinking, like, man, I wonder what's going to happen when Montreal faces one of these teams. They'll cross that bridge when they get to it. They've introduced a new. I love this move by the Canadians that they've introduced this half price Saturday night thing. Your second food item is half price. So if you buy a hot dog, the second hot dog is half price. Okay. Which is like cool, sure, why not? Like that's great, and it's I'm all for the overpriced concessions at any sporting event being given away a little bit cheaper, but also please note that tickets are on average $46 more than they were last year. So you've got the $46 increase in ticket price, but on Saturday nights you get second item of food half price. I'm just saying. So Alex Galchenyuk's a game time decision, I think, for this game, and I guess that's more the results of an injury than anything else. It appears that if he does play, he's going to play on the 4th line and not be on either power play unit. Alex Galchenyuk's been struggling this season for the Canadians, a young former 30 goal scorer who appears to have fallen out of the good graces of the coach, the general manager, and many segments of the media in this town. And it's feeling sort of like deja vu all over again, with maybe Alex Galchenyuk being the next player who gets sort of run out of town here on the during the Marc Bergevin administration. And something's going on here, and I don't think that it's. I'm not willing to point the finger at anybody because I don't know, but it's this real all or nothing mentality where it's like it's Galchenyuk's fault. No, it's Michel Terrier's fault. No, it's Claude Julien's fault. And, I think there's probably enough blame to go around when it comes to what's happened to Alex Galchenyuk and why he hasn't been able to realize his potential yet as a full-time NHL player. And I don't think there's any one person to point the finger at. A number of factors I think could be at play. But one thing that does drive me crazy, and you see this happen, and I would love for logic to take over here when it comes to hockey decisions, like Alex Galchenyuk. Oh, he's not going. Okay, he hit the post twice the other night. So what you're telling me is that he hit the post twice in a game. Had he not hit the post and put the puck in the net, everything would be fine and he'd still be skating on the second line. If so, then it's a stupid way of making decisions. And I'll give you another example. If a player is coming up the ice, we saw it. Ryan Hartman of the Chicago Blackhawks. Tuesday night, Habs home opener, 1 minute and 15 seconds into the game. Ryan Hartman gives the puck away and it lands on Tomas Plekanec's stick. Right away, Plekanec shoots, he scores. 1-0 Montreal. Basically, the guy played less than 10 minutes the rest of the game, Ryan Hartman did. And you can't tell me with a straight face that if that same play happens and Plekanec doesn't score, right? Corey Crawford makes the save, doesn't get handcuffed by the shot. He makes the save. Is Ryan Hartman going to be glued to the bench?
Probably not.
And so how is that logical in any way, shape, or form? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's the one event that is the fault of the guy, mistake made. And then there's another separate event, the shot on goal, which has nothing to do with the guy who did the giveaway. The goalie, Corey Crawford gave up a bad goal. It really is there's no other way of slicing it there, but Hartman's the one who gets hung for it. But if Crawford makes that save, Hartman probably doesn't get benched. And that's the thing to me. It's just so strange is that a giveaway that leads to a goal, even if the goal is then the fault of the goaltender not being ready or just getting caught out of position, is given so much more importance than another giveaway. So if you have a great goaltender behind a guy who makes tons of mistakes, that type of stuff can get glossed over. Whereas another player who makes the same mistakes on another team and it doesn't have as good of a goaltender behind him is going to be blamed for all kinds of problems. It's this strange mentality. If a guy is hitting the post and you're saying he's not playing well. Well, 1 inch to the right, he's doing fine. I think it's a strange way of making evaluations.
Recency bias.
I guess so, yeah. So anyway, we're going to have some fun today. We're going to talk about plenty more than the Canadians, including the Habs-Leafs rivalry we'll look into with Sean McIndoe. Some surprising name on the coaching hot seats in the National Hockey League. Sean McIndoe is going to be joining us next. Down Goes Brown. It's your Saturday pre-game edition. This is Hockey Primetime on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio and streaming live at hockeyprimetime.com.
Back in 2 minutes, 10 seconds. I'll call Sean in about 45 seconds.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Who do they get for Derek Stepan?
I don't know.
Really?
But,
All right.
I'm trying to figure this out, but
Figure what out?
like who he got traded for.
Oh, that's not a difficult thing to do.
I'm just Googling the wrong things. So their record isn't very good right now.
No.
New York's record.
Sean's on the line back in 45 seconds.
Thank you.
Anthony D'Angelo and the number 7 pick. What are you thinking here? What's
For
doing a Yahoo search? Are you? Good for you.
you know what? It's doing it by itself. I'm so used to Chrome.
Three, 2, 1. Hello. Welcome back. This is Hockey Primetime. My name's Conor McKenna. Laura Sab is here. She's the producer of the show. I'm the host. Nice to be with you on this Saturday. It is a Montreal-Toronto Saturday night game. Habs-Leafs, the rivalry resumes. And the Canadians, if my preseason prediction is going to play out here, they better figure it out so that we get that Leafs-Habs first-round playoff matchup. Never in my life have I seen the Canadians play the Leafs in the playoffs. It just feels wrong that's still true. I'm 34 years old, man. Like, is it ever going to happen? Let's talk a little bit about the rivalry, talk about the teams. Sean McIndoe of Sportsnet and Vice Sports is on the line. You can find him on Twitter at DownGoesBrown. Hello, Sean.
Hello.
How goes it, man?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
All right. Glad to hear it. And yes, hey, it's Saturday night. It's the Canadians and the Maple Leafs. The Leafs coming out to looking like some kind of juggernaut out of the gates this season, and the Canadians cannot score. Which of the two teams is currently? I think any reasonable person expects that the Leafs will not continue to score 6 goals a game. The Canadians will not continue to score 1 goal a game, and things will sort of regress back to the mean. But which of the two teams do you think is what they're currently doing is closer to what their sort of true self is?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we're sort of seeing the extreme versions of probably what these teams actually are, and yeah, Montreal is not going to shoot 2% for the entire year, and then the Toronto Maple Leafs aren't going to be scoring 5 goals a game for the entire year. I would say if I had to pick one of these teams and say that we're probably seeing closer to what they really are, I might pick the Maple Leafs, because I think that If you take what we've seen over their first 4 games and just dial the numbers at both ends down a little bit, that's probably more or less what we're going to see all year. This is a team that has a ton of skill up front, and they are young, they are fast, and they can score a bunch of goals, and they can score them quickly. They're the sort of team we've already seen it this year where there have been stretches where they haven't been playing well, and then suddenly you get up, go to the kitchen, make yourself a sandwich, and you come back and they put 3 goals behind somebody. I think we're not going to see them scoring 7 or 8 goals all that often. But I do think that this is going to be a team that is going to be near the top of the league in goals scored, and then probably also closer to the top of the league in terms of goals allowed than Mike Babcock would like. We're still not quite sure what Frederik Andersen is. He has not been great so far this year. This is a young team on the back end too, and they do have their breakdowns. They do make mistakes, and you will probably see them give up more goals than they'd like. Whereas you look at Montreal, I think the goal scoring might continue to be an issue, certainly not to the degree it's been, but this is a team that heading into the season, we all kind of looked at them and went, geez, is there enough here to score enough goals? Who's the big number one center? Do they need to go out and find that guy? But the one thing that jumps out at me when I look at the Montreal Canadiens so far this year is that Carey Price just hasn't been all that good yet. We have a bunch of question marks about a bunch of young players on both of these teams and kind of wondering, geez, what do we really have with those guys? We don't have that question with Carey Price. We know this guy is one of, if not the best goaltenders in the league, and that assuming he stays healthy by the end of the year, his numbers will reflect that. And he hasn't. Part of the problem in Montreal right now is he hasn't stolen a few games for the Canadiens to make up for that lack of scoring, and maybe you need a couple of those 1-0 wins to get things back on track. He will do that as the season goes on. So if I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan, I'm not panicking yet. I'm concerned certainly about the offensive side. I'm not concerned about Carey Price, and I know he's going to get back into form and probably start stealing a bunch of games for us pretty soon.
Chatting with Sean McIndoe. You can read his work at Sportsnet, Vice Sports, and other locations. This is Hockey Primetime. I'm Conor McKenna, and we've got Habs Leafs coming up next, actually, here on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio. I mean, I'm assuming we do. I can't imagine there would be a different game starting at 7 o'clock on these airwaves. So what about sort of the direction of the two teams is another thing that I wanted to ask you about. Sort of with Marc Bergevin at the helm, and I know that Lou Lamoriello is the GM, but I still think of Brendan Shanahan as really the guy, right? Like top dog there when it comes to the way that hockey team is run. It seems like such a study in contrast to me, and we've sort of seen that with the way things have gone in the last couple of years. I mean, these are two guys that have what I think, and I'd be curious to hear your take, are just extremely different and sort of even opposing ways of doing things.
Yeah, I mean, Marc Bergevin has been, to my eyes, one of the most interesting and at times confusing general managers in the league ever since he took over the job. There are times where he makes moves, and I'm sitting there as a Maple Leafs fan who probably wouldn't mind if the Canadiens hit some tough times. I'm sitting there going, oh no, they got a genius running the show over there. This guy's making some great moves. And then he will do other things that just leave you completely scratching your head. And then he'll also not do certain things that you just assume he's going to get done, like going out and making a deal for a surefire top 6 center, which was the number one addition that we all looked at that team going into the off season as needing to make. So I mean, he's got me scratching my head. There are times where I think that this guy is fantastic at his job. There are other times where I'm kind of wondering what he's doing. Whereas you look at the Maple Leafs, I mean, the thing with the Maple Leafs is, ever since Brendan Shanahan came in, it's been a much clearer path. We all knew, when you're at rock bottom, it's not really that hard to chart a course. You know which direction you need to go, and obviously it's not. That's not to say that it's easy to get there, and it's certainly not easy to get there as quickly as the Maple Leafs appear to have. But I think going in, doing the strip it down and build it back up, rebuild and drafting smartly, and certainly winning the draft lottery does not hurt along the way. It's been a little bit more of a clearer path. Although there are still those questions of, like you say, who is in charge there? Who is running the show? Is this a Lou Lamoriello production, or is it Brendan Shanahan? Is it some of the other guys in the front office? Who's next up if and when Lou decides he doesn't want to do this anymore? There certainly are some questions. But yeah, you look at the last few years of these two teams, a lot of question marks for the Montreal Canadiens, and probably not all that many for the Maple Leafs. Certainly a lot fewer than we're used to with this organization.
So we'll see what happens tonight when they meet for the first time this year. Wouldn't it be great to see a playoff series between these two teams?
I can't wait. And, I've been banging that drum for so many years. I'm like, yeah, I'm a little bit older than you. I think they have had a playoff series in my lifetime, but I was far too young to pay any attention to it. And, it's crazy that they haven't, because these two teams have been in the same division for nearly 20 years now, and it's you would think that at some point just the odds would say that they would have to wind up facing each other, but it's so rare that these two teams are good at the same time. There have been so many times where one team's good and then the other one plummets, and then that team rebuilds and the other one's gone. And we came so close a few years ago. People forget that 2013, when the Leafs made the playoffs, we all remember what happened against the Boston Bruins. But people forget that right up until the very last day of that season, it was going to be Leafs and Montreal. And then I think the Ottawa Senators came along and messed it up and gave us that Leafs Bruins matchup that you don't want to talk about if you're a Leafs fan, and you probably can't stop talking about if you're a fan of any of the other teams. All
right. With Sean McIndoe, he's Down Goes Brown on the Twitter, and Sports Info Sports is one of the places, a couple of the places, I should say, where you can read his stuff. One more sort of on the Leafs here, and I've heard it suggested by some people whose opinions I respect a great deal, that you're always in danger of sort of having your window closed preemptively. You talk about how quickly things have sort of come together for the Leafs. We've learned that things can fall apart very quickly for clubs as well. And that sort of championship window, unless you're Mark Bergevin, you don't believe in championship windows, is sometimes going to shut. So is it incumbent on them, with Matthews on that entry-level deal and Patrick Marleau, a sprightly and youthful 38 years old, time now for them to sort of go all in this year and try to win the Stanley Cup?
Well, that's kind of the question, and I think with the Leafs, it's not so much about a window closing. We do talk about that with a lot of teams. The Rangers. We've been having that discussion for years. The Capitals, even the Blackhawks. As far as, geez, can these guys still have an opportunity to win? We're a long way away from any sort of window closing on the Toronto Maple Leafs. The question is really, is the window open yet? Because if it's open, then you do go for it, and you do sit there and say, okay, what pieces are we missing for a potential championship run? And let's take a swing at it. And I know that there are many people, including a lot of people in media, a lot of people in the hockey world, who kind of say, well, slow down, pump the brakes a little bit here. This team was dead last 2 seasons ago. These are rebuilds that are supposed to take 3, 4, 5 years just to get you to the point where you start asking these questions. You're not supposed to be doing it essentially 2 weeks into year 2. And yet the reality is, sometimes you got to move quick. There is that looming salary cap headache that we know is coming when Austin Matthews needs his new deal, and Mitch Marner and William Nylander could sign one already but hasn't yet. So this is coming, and you got to sit down and sort of look at this team, and maybe it takes a little bit of evaluation this year for Mike Babcock and Brendan Shanahan and everyone else to watch this team and really have a good, honest conversation that says, is this a team that is starting to look like a Stanley Cup contender, maybe a Stanley Cup contender that's missing 1 or 2 pieces? And if you feel like that's what you've got, then by all means, you don't necessarily go all in. You don't necessarily trade all your draft picks, all your prospects, all the young guys you got sitting around who aren't part of the core. But do you move some of them if you can get maybe that top 4 defenseman, or if you feel like you need more depth in goal, or whatever it is? I think you absolutely do it if you're honest with yourself and you feel like you've got a contender here. Then damn the torpedoes and let's go for it, and not worry about some old timer telling us that this was supposed to take 5 years instead of 2.
It's been so much fun to watch them so far this year, and even last year it was a great season. But it is funny how nostalgia sort of comes in. I find the way that people talk about last year. It's like, it was a great season. They lost in the first round of the playoffs, so like the bar, I guess, wasn't set that high. But yeah, I'm sort of with you. I just think the next couple of years, it's just going to keep being fun. I mean, it must be. I gotta say, like, it must be really fun to be a Leafs fan right now. You know what I mean? After a couple of decades where, let's be honest, it really wasn't that fun, right?
Well, this is definitely a lot more fun than the last decade or so. And but you know what? It's expectations are a heck of a thing. And I remember I wrote a piece last year, midway through the year, where I said, you know what, this year is the fun year. The 2016-17 season was the fun one for the Maple Leafs, because you could sit there and you could watch the team and you could watch it, and they were winning and they were competitive and they were fun to watch. And yet you didn't really have any of those expectations hanging over. If they had missed the playoffs, okay, no big deal. They made the playoffs. They went out in round one, you're right, in a year where there were plenty of other upsets and they didn't pull one off, but still nobody was calling that a disappointment. This year they're going to be better, we hope, and in theory that makes them more fun. But now the expectations kick in. If they go out in round one this year, maybe that's not something you look at as a victory. Maybe it's a disappointment. And certainly over the next few years, that's going to build and build to the point where at some point it's going to be Stanley Cup or bust. And you know what? When you're watching other teams have that approach and have that attitude, you're jealous of them. You say, that's what we want. But when it's your team doing it, suddenly it gets to be nail-biting time, and maybe it's not quite as fun as you remembered it being.
Sean, thank you for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
That is Sean McIndoe. I'm Conor McKenna. This is Hockey Primetime. We're coming back in just a few moments. A pleasure to welcome back our next guest. We haven't had a chance to chat with him in a while. He's got a new gig at Pro Hockey Talk on NBC Sports. Let's take a look at the Metropolitan Division. You Flyers fans and Rangers fans and Penguins fans. How about those Devils? Hey, flying. Beating the Leafs the other night to scoring a goal on a 5-on-3 shorthanded situation. Haven't seen that happen. That was the first time in Devils franchise history that's ever happened. And they've had some pretty good shorthanded players on that team over the years. So Metro Division talk with Sean Leahy of NBC's Pro Hockey Talk next on Hockey Primetime here on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio and streaming live at hockeyprimetime.com, Facebook Live, and Periscope.
Back in 2 minutes. Back in 45 seconds. Sean is on the line.
Great, thanks.
It's New Jersey, no? Or was that last night? It was last night.
Oh, you're right. No, it's the Panthers. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Weird.
Yeah, New Jersey is at Madison Square Garden.
What?
New Jersey.
Oh. Yeah, I know. Sorry. back. This is Hockey Primetime on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio, streaming live at hockeyprimetime.com. We're on the Facebook Live. Have you rewatched, Laura, a Facebook Live stream of Hockey Primetime since they've been available?
I feel kind of awkward watching myself, like after the fact. I mean, we can kind of see ourselves on screen right now, like on our laptops.
Are you tripping?
A little bit. It's so much weirder watching it way after the fact.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I haven't done that. Anytime I do anything, I just immediately pretend that thing that I did never happened. So that's my general life philosophy and work philosophy. We've got a busy night. It's Saturday night and heavy Metropolitan Division night. The rivalry night a little bit. You got the Devils at the Rangers. The Capitals are playing against the Philadelphia Flyers. So a couple of teams going head-to-head in that division. I wanted to take a look at that division specifically, one of the more intriguing ones in the Eastern Conference, and somebody I know has certainly got an eye on some of the teams in those divisions, in that division, I should say, and really an eye on every team in the National Hockey League. He's got a new gig at Pro Hockey Talk on NBC Sports. Sean Leahy, good evening.
Hey, Connor, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Congratulations on the new gig.
Thanks. Been great so far.
What can you tell me about what you're going to be doing there?
It's a similar kind of thing we used to do over at Puck.Yahoo, and just kind of covering all of the bases all around the NHL and trying to find those kind of quirky, offbeat stories that kind of that maybe you won't find anywhere else. So it's first week in, and looking forward to the rest of the season. And
that's a Pro Hockey Talk on NBC Sports. You can follow them at Pro Hockey Talk. Sean's on Twitter at Sean, spelt the correct way, SEAN _ Leahy, LEAHY. So I'm losing my voice here. All right, that's better. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this division. I wanted to start with the Philadelphia Flyers, who came into the season with 8 players breaking camp, 8 defensemen, I should say, breaking camp, 6 of whom were age 24 or younger. Now we're hearing that Travis Sanheim is going to be sitting for the Flyers tonight. How much can a team expect to do in this day and age with 6 defensemen under the age of 24 and Andrew McDonald on their blue line?
Yeah, certainly challenging, but I mean, to their credit, they do have some talented young D-men, Shane Gostisbehere, Ivan Provorov, Travis Sanheim. There's some talent there that can kind of play beyond their age, and as we've seen in Gostisbehere and Provorov last year, in the last couple of years, really, they've been able to hold their own through some struggles here and there. So, but over the course of a season, and like you mentioned before, in a pretty tough division, they're certainly going to be tested, and you got to wonder, how long does they sit with those young defensemen that maybe kind of adding a veteran presence there to help in the blue line start to go south.
And they're facing a Washington team tonight that is, I think for the first time, maybe dealing with actual diminished expectations. It seems like every year everybody's talking about them as a Stanley Cup contender. And I don't know how much I heard that this year. It seems like they lost some important players. I think it's difficult to make a case that they're a better team on paper this year than they are last year. They were last year, but it feels maybe like Barry Trotz is coaching for his job a little bit here. They still have a really good team. They've got off to a good start. What do you make of this Washington Capitals team this year?
Yeah, and there was those quotes from Brian McClellan before the season about how the franchise really still hasn't gotten over losing to the Pens, yet again in the playoffs and not getting over that hump and getting past the second round. But, to their credit, maybe the players are kind of using that as motivation and maybe realizing this, if it doesn't happen this year, things are really going to get blown up in the summertime. They're playing great. Ovi has half the team's goals already. He's on fire. They look top 3 scorers in the league, and they're all Capitals. So their offense is still there. I mean, they've always been a great offensive team, and Braden Holtby's playing great. And this is definitely going to be a very interesting season for them because, like you mentioned, Barry Trotz, right now he's a lame duck coach. He's not signed beyond this season. So that's kind of interesting, especially a guy who has had success in his career there in Nashville. If Brian McClellan is kind of using this as a little bit of a carrot year for him, where if things don't go well, they're going to look somewhere else. But even though they did take some losses there, in the offseason, losing guys like Justin Williams, they have some young players coming through Jacob Verana's looked pretty well. Christian Juice scored his first NHL goal the other day. And obviously their big dogs are carrying the load as usual. So a lot of even though there's some diminished expectations, I think around hockey with the Capitals, just because they're in a tough division. The Penguins are the Penguins. Columbus is up and coming. There's other teams. Carolina's up and coming as well. I still think there's a lot of expectations on the Capitals this year to at least have a respectable season. Otherwise, like we were talking about, things could get really ugly this next offseason.
The Devils are at Madison Square Garden for a rivalry game at 7:00 tonight, and that's a Devils team that did come crashing down to earth, but still has gotten off. They've been really one of the pleasant surprises of the young NHL season. I don't think you don't want to make too big of a deal one way or the other about a hot start or a slow start, but could the Devils be better than we thought they'd be?
Yeah, the Ray Shero has done a really quiet job of putting together a solid team. And, like you said, it's early days, but they've looked pretty well. And when you have a guy like Jesper Bratt, a 6th-round pick, coming out of nowhere and getting off to a great start, Will Butcher, his first, for his rookie season, he's been producing, well. And it's, Corey Schneider in the back, so you're solid there. Yeah, pretty solid blue line. You get young kids coming through, Pavel Zacha, Miles Wood, Bratt and Butcher, to complement also their veterans there. Marcus Johansson, one of those ex-Capitals who was dealt away over the summer, and obviously Taylor Hall, Adam Henrique, and the veterans who have been there the last several years. There's a good mix of veteran and youth talent there. And so if this isn't the year that the Devils get the playoffs, if the next 2-3 years, adding a couple more pieces there, Ray Shero definitely has them on the right track.
And they're without Travis Zajac too, who's an important player for them and a guy who they're, I think, going to be missing. But no, it's been fun. And here's the other thing that's weird about the Devils. They've been fun to watch so far this year. I mean, I'd say on aggregate, maybe my least favorite team to watch over the last 2 decades, but they've played some really exciting hockey games so far this year. It's weird to see the Devils playing this sort of high-flying, exciting brand of hockey, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a very, very long time. I don't know how long it's been, but yeah, you stroll through the center ice channels and you land on a Devils game. They're exciting. Nico Hischier, the young talent there. It's no longer the boring, trapping, ho-hum Devils. There's some skill there and some exciting skill there. And Ray Shero's, he's building something good there. And maybe not this year, but I think if they're close around the deadline time, I could certainly see him being aggressive and making a move or two, because we saw him do that in Pittsburgh almost every single year he was the GM there. If they were close, he was making the move to kind of put them over the top.
And they'll face their arch rivals, the New York Rangers, and that's tonight at Madison Square Garden. The Rangers are off to their worst start, Sean, since 2013. They're 1-4 out of the gates this year. Was this at least somewhat predictable, knowing that they lost a guy like Derek Stepan in that trade to the Arizona Coyotes? I mean, however you feel about him, he was a productive player in the National Hockey League. You get a 7th overall draft pick in return, but that's a hard slot in your roster to sort of just replace with a draft pick. Like, what do you think about this Rangers team, and is it sort of the end of an era?
Yeah, I think we're getting there, because Henrik Lundqvist isn't getting any younger. Yeah, at 35 years old, and Mika Zibanejad for he's done well through the early season. He's produced, taken the number 1 center spot, and Shattenkirk's produced as well. But the depth there, it's not what it was in years past when they were an annual playoff team, making deep runs in the Eastern Conference. And this could definitely be a year where they miss, and it could kind of be a reset year. But like I said, they're running out of years where Henrik Lundqvist is going to be able to save them. And there are nights in the past where he was able to be that guy to help them win a 1-0, 2-1 game. But the offensive horses, I don't think, are there on a regular basis now for them to do that. And Hank's obviously not what he was 2, 3, 4 years ago. He's still solid, but he's not the trophy caliber guy anymore. So I think they're missing a few pieces, and I'm curious to see how Steve Horton's going to approach this year, whether he feels that he needs to add now or maybe just wait until the season and kind of move some pieces then.
Who's leading the Pittsburgh Penguins in scoring? Is it Sidney Crosby? Is it Evgeny Malkin? No, it's Brian Rust, who has 7 points already this season. He had 8 multi-point games in his first 3 NHL seasons. He's already got 3 multi-point games in his first 5 games this year. He's on a line with Evgeny Malkin and Phil Kessel, which is a nice place to be if you can hack it. But he's just another one of these guys, that Jim Rutherford and his people seem to have done such a good job of digging up. At Jake Gensel, another guy who sort of came out of nowhere. And then I look at the bottom 6 for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I see Greg McKegg as their third line center. Do they have the depth, as good as their top 2 centers are? Do they have the depth up the middle, do you think, to keep having Stanley Cup aspirations?
That's the big question, right? The third center spot was a big question mark over the summer. There was those rumors that maybe they were going to pursue Riley Sheehan if Andreas Anastasiou eventually signed in Detroit, but that didn't happen. So they turned to Greg McKegg, and he's been okay. Through 5 games, he's done his job, but over the course of the season and making a deep Stanley Cup run, I don't know if that's a feasible situation. Certainly, Jim Rutherford isn't shy to make an in-season move to kind of fill a gap, but it's just a matter of who's available out there and what the other team wants in return. So we know their top 6 are what they are. Their bottom 6 is what it is. And we looked at last couple of postseasons, really, their bottom 6 haven't been great, but those guys have been able to step up when needed. And maybe that's kind of what he's hoping for this season, where, you throw in some pieces there and hope those guys step up when it counts. But of course, going for 3 straight Stanley Cups, it's a lot. They played a lot of hockey the last couple of years, and it'd be easy to see if this year that they missed, because there's so many other good teams in the Eastern Conference that it'd be hard not to see one of those teams trying knock them off in the postseason. And
the division is so good. I mean, we've only talked about a couple of the teams. Now we'll talk about the Blue Jackets in a few, and that is a very, very nice looking team they've got there in Columbus this year. Sean, congrats again on the new gig, and thanks for chatting with us today.
You got it, Connor, anytime.
That's from NBC's Pro Hockey Talk. That is Sean Leahy joining us here on Hockey Primetime. Coming up next, Allison Lucan, who covers the Columbus Blue Jackets. She's also got a new gig. She's with the Athletic Cleveland, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the Columbus Blue Jackets and how their system is looking. That's what's coming up next year as we wrap up hour number 1 of Hockey Primetime on SiriusXM, NHL Network Radio, and streaming live at hockeyprimetime.com.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Rob.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good.
See you, Jess. No problem. Yeah, we're gonna be a little tight for time on this last segment.
Yeah, we knew that. It was a short segment.
Okay, no problem.
So
I'll get him online right now.
Perfect.
Thanks.
So it's Rob now. Jesse's gone.
Okay.
So I have a Panarin goal here. They'll play, and then I'll turn your mic on.
Thanks, bud.
No problem.
So Plekanec is still game time, but he did the warm-up, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Did he do the warm-up? I don't know.
No, he didn't do the warm-up.
Because the warm-up hasn't happened yet.
That is correct.
Artemi Panarin through the neutral zone. Cuts now into the range and has it on the forehand. He shoots and he scores! Oh, bake me a big loaf, bread man! Artemi Panarin has broken the tie. It's 2-1.
Oh yeah, the cannon was going at Nationwide Arena, and the bread man Artemi Panarin getting his first goal as a member of the Columbus Blue Jackets, doing it in style, and they'll be looking for their third straight win tonight, going up against expansion partners. Do I want to say, was that right? Did the Wild and the Blue Jackets come into the league at the same time? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe our next guest knows. Her name is Allison Lucan. She's been covering the team for a couple of years. It's a pleasure to welcome her back to the show for the first time this season, and starting a new gig at the Athletic Cleveland, covering prospects and the Columbus Blue Jackets organization. Allison, how you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Yeah, pleasure. And thanks for making time for us. And you know what? I said Allison Lucan, Athletic Cleveland. I did not say Allison Lucan, wedding officiant, but I can add that to your official title now, can I?
That is true. I have a couple little tools in my toolbox, and I'm fortunate to be officiating a wedding for a dear friend this evening. So I'm going to have to catch up on tonight's game a little after live broadcast.
I think that sounds like a pretty good reason, you know? If like as far as reasons to miss a game go, I think that attending a dear friend's wedding and you're the officiant, I mean, you can't miss that. So yeah, don't be late. They look great, the Blue Jackets do, especially right now. I mean, this is just a stacked roster, and I think I feel like there's question marks surrounding every team in some way in the salary cap era. It seems to me that they have fewer than most. How good of a roster have they put together for this year?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what's interesting is that the roster that's been put together is very strong, but it's had some bumps in getting to full health. Boone Jenner, of course, is still out with a back injury, and Josh Anderson missed the entirety of training camp. So the bottom six was quite a bit of a question, just who would step up. But we're seeing players like Sonny Milano, who just has blown the doors off coming in this season, and some other guys new to the organization, new to the NHL game, who have established themselves in the Artemi Panarin, that highlight you just played. I mean, my gosh, what an addition.
Yeah, and that's a nice thing. I mean, if you have the pieces, you can sort of make a trade like Saad for Panarin, and one of those ones that could be the rare win-win trade for both teams, as Saad has Jonathan Taves looking like he's in a fountain of youth there in Chicago, and Panarin scoring game-winning goals for the Blue Jackets. You said the name of Sonny Milano, who was an exciting prospect all the way, but well, it's my kind of player. I love flashy guys and guys that are completely sort of unashamed of how much fun they're having out there on the ice with that massive sort of skill level. But 4 goals already, including an overtime winner there the other day. I mean, he's come blazing out of the gates and looks like he's going to be a good one, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. And I think everyone saw that highlight reel from YouTube that he put together his draft year when the Jackets picked him up, where he's doing insane things with a puck on his stick. But what he's really had to focus on since then in the organization is getting his two-way game underway, and also understanding when to use that just blisteringly impressive skill. And that's what he's done, is show that he knows when to do that and when the game situation calls for perhaps a more conservative play. And it's obviously yielding results. I mean, he had 4 goals in the first 3 games and 2 game winners. That's crazy, and it's what got the Jackets off on the right start.
Allison Lucan covers the Columbus Blue Jackets for the Athletic, and is going to be taking a look at the organization in general. Can you tell me a little bit more about what your role is going to be with the Athletic, an organization that just keeps adding some of my favorite names from around hockey? It seems like every day we hear a new one.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited. One of the areas, as you mentioned, is I'll be looking at the building blocks of the organization. We're calling it a depth
2 minutes
Monday. In addition to checking in on all of the prospects in the organization, we'll also be looking for those stories about how prospects evolve, whether it's a specific prospect or something that the organization is doing to help those players along. We have a really interesting piece coming out Monday that I'm excited for people to hear, a new wrinkle that the Jackets are implementing at the AHL level. So that'll be on Mondays. And then every Thursdays, we'll be diving in on the analytical side at the NHL level. And again, looking at a player or perhaps a team strategy or a team concept and look at the mechanics of how the Jackets are doing in terms of accomplishment
90 seconds
on the ice. And who knows what else might fall in there along the way. But those are the two things for sure every week you'll see from me.
And right now, so you can check it out. If you are a Blue Jackets fan, it's time to subscribe to The Athletic. There's deals going on all the time. The subscription, I subscribed a couple of months ago, and I feel like my year has already paid for itself. Something really good on the site right now is the Ray Shiro, Mike Babcock column that Pierre LeBrun put together. Worth checking out. And again, if you subscribe, you get access to The Athletic in every single market that it's in. So a pretty good one if you're a sports fan. Allison, I wish we had more time. Let's make sure that we make a little bit more of it next time. Good luck with your officiating duties tonight.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Allison Lucan on the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are looking pretty good, and another exciting team to watch. That team, that division, the Metropolitan, I think they're going to send 5 teams to the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. Just a really, really nice group. So, what do we have coming up next? We've got another hour of the show. It's Hockey Primetime. Let's talk a little bit about the Washington Capitals and go around the National Hockey League with Stephen Wino from the Associated Press. Stephen's going to be joining us in just a few moments' time, so please stay with us. And we're streaming live on Facebook Live and on Periscope and all over the place. This is Hockey Primetime. We'll be right back.
Okay, so we got 2 minutes, and Steven's on the line, and I have a Ovechkin goal up here that Jesse left. That's right?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect.
Interesting. The Rangers would like to add down the middle. Maybe they shouldn't have traded Derek Stepan for a seventh overall draft pick. All right.
Just to give you a heads up, I don't think this is going to matter, but the power just went out here, but the board still works usually, but just so you know. Huh. Okay, I'm in the dark.
Is the guest still on the line?
Yes. I think our room is safe for that.
Cool.
If Trump and Kim Jong-un get into it, I think we're still okay.
Well, Montreal still has light, but it could be coming down the line.
This is a running theme. Like the last night, I was at a restaurant and the power went out. And then today, like I was at a friend's house and the power had just gone out, and now the power's out. Maybe I'm the bad luck thing.
I don't think you should give yourself that much credit. You know?
Yeah.
some sorcery going on.
It's a mistake that we all make sometimes. Be like, oh, my favorite team is losing. It must be because I'm sitting in this chair. You know?
You don't believe in superstition?
I do not.
So yesterday was okay for you?
Yesterday was totally fine. Binge watched 2 shows on Netflix. It was great.
The lights back on, so I think we're okay anyway.
All right.
Steve is at the Flyers Philly game. Sorry.
Caps.
The Caps are in Philadelphia, and so is Steve.
He's always in Philadelphia, eh?
That's where he's from.
Yeah,
and it's very close.
But he doesn't live there.
No.
10 seconds. Here we go.
Thank you.
Center point now to Carlson. It's Backstrom into the right circle. Across to Ovechkin. He scores! Alex Ovechkin on a power play. Keeps it low from the office against Corey Schneider. And with 11:59 to go in the second, Ovechkin's 9th of the year makes it 2-0 Washington.
Yes, sir. He's been doing a lot of that so far this season. Alexander Ovechkin is flying. He's got half the Washington Capitals' total goals this year. And, we all knew at age 32 that Alex Ovechkin, like a fine wine, would be aging in style. And the Capitals looking pretty good, although they got some bad news on Matt Niskanen earlier today. So with more on that and to go around the National Hockey League, it is a pleasure to welcome back to the show from the scene of what should be a good one tonight, the Flyers and the Capitals in Philadelphia. Stephen Wino is on the line from the Associated Press. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Connor. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Thanks for making time for us here tonight. So what do you think of, what do you make of this impressive start from a Capitals team that suffered the loss of several significant players this offseason?
Well, it's been on the strength of the high-end talent, whether it's Alex Ovechkin, Nicholas Backstrom, Evgeny Kuznetsov, TJ Oshie, and in goal, Braden Holtby. And if you know you're going to get Alex Ovechkin scoring 2 goals a game or Braden Holtby playing at his Vezina caliber ways for the entire season, I think this is a gimme playoff team and certainly a team contending for the top of the Metropolitan Division again. But I don't know how sustainable this is right now, given the injury to Matt Niskanen and given the Capitals' lack of depth, because as good as they've been so far, defensively they've been a mess. The blue line doesn't have a whole lot of depth. And with the injury to Matt Niskanen, the team's really going to be tested over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
They also have Nicholas Backstrom going. He's got 10 points, a 4-game point streak happening right now. Sometimes I forget that this guy is a 100-point player. Like, staying healthy has been a little bit of an issue, but he has had 100 points in a season in the NHL. He should still be in the prime scoring years of his career. And I would imagine for fantasy hockey players, maybe a guy who flew at least a little bit under the radar. Now, this production is massive from him early on, and it's a big ask to ask him to keep it up. But geez, I mean, if you have Backstrom and Ovechkin clicking, I guess the sky's sort of the limit for this team, isn't it?
Yeah, and what Barry Trotz has done so far is Nicholas Backstrom playing on really what is the top line with Andrei Burakovsky and TJ Oshie, and Evgeny Kuznetsov with Alex Ovechkin and rookie a couple years ago's first-round pick Jacob Vrana. So now you're forcing teams' top defensive pairs to say, who are you going to try to stop? Backstrom and Oshie or Kuznetsov and Ovechkin? And that's a real tough problem to have. And it's one of the reasons why the Capitals have had so much success early on this season, because both those lines are clicking, and it's a pick your poison situation. And Backstrom, it can make anyone better. TJ Oshie already has 5 goals. I'm sure I could score 20 goals playing next to Nicholas Backstrom. And it feels that way with Evgeny Kuznetsov too. He makes guys on his line and around him on the ice better. And when you have 2 elite centers like that, that's how you win in the regular season, and that's how you win in the playoffs, as we've seen with the Pittsburgh Penguins over the past several years.
I saw it from your Twitter account actually earlier today that Matt Niskanen on a long-term injured reserve with what they're calling an upper body injury. That though is a huge blow for this team, isn't it?
It is, because they only have 2 right shot defensemen to begin with, Matt Niskanen and John Carlson. Matt Niskanen on their power play averaged 26 minutes a game before he got hurt. They rely on him a lot, especially with young defensemen in the lineup, a guy like a Christian Juice. And some maybe guys who are slotted above where they should be, Brooks Orpik, maybe a Taylor Chorney and Aaron Ness, those kind of guys, that now it's going to be incumbent on John Carlson, and the Capitals called up 22-year-old Madison Bowie this afternoon to potentially make his NHL debut tonight in Philadelphia. that now you're going to have to spread out those minutes a little bit more. And now for the Capitals over the next potentially 24 days or maybe even longer without Matt Niskanen, it's going to be about staying afloat and trying to avoid a lot of the defensive miscues with those second and third pairs that have hurt them in some of these games so far.
They're going to be facing a young and sort of exciting Flyers team tonight that are actually only now making their debut. Their home opener is tonight, and we're talking to Stephen Wino, who's on site for the Washington-Philadelphia game tonight. And Dave Haxtell, I know, talked about some of these rookies like Nolan Patrick, Robert Hagg, Travis Sanheim, who actually is I think going to be sat out of this game for the Flyers. But it's an exciting time for the Flyers again, isn't it? With so many good young players on the way up.
Yeah, it should be. And Dave Haxtell does like to scratch these young kids when they make mistakes. He did it with Travis Konechny and Shane Gostisbehere last year. He's doing it with Travis Sanheim, and I'm sure at some point we'll do it with Nolan Patrick and frustrate the heck out of everybody this season because that's kind of his coaching style. But it's an exciting time because we don't know how good this defense is going to be with an Ivan Provorov, Robert Hagg, Travis Sanheim, even Samuel Morin, who's in the minors now. Philippe Myers, who's in junior. There are a lot of good defensive prospects on the team. And if Nolan Patrick turns out to be the number 2 center that people expect him to be, this is a Flyers team with a lot of future ahead because they've got some goalies on the way as well. Carter Hart, who played for Canada at the World Junior last year, one of those guys. Felix Sandstrom from Sweden. They have some potential guys in the pipeline to where in 2-3 years, Claude Giroux is still going to be in his prime. Nolan Patrick's going to be in his prime, and these defensemen are going to be experienced in the league. And you're going to start to see Philadelphia be a real threat in the Eastern Conference very soon.
How's Sean Couturier looking between Giroux and Voracek?
Pretty good. And this is a guy who had been pegged as a third-line center for a lot of years, a top 10 overall draft pick, maybe with a higher ceiling. We thought it had a higher ceiling than this. And it was an interesting move to put Claude Giroux on the wing, try to take a little bit of pressure off him. I think Sean Couturier works well there because you want more offense out of him, and you're almost forcing him to do that. The only issue I have with that line is you do have kind of 3 passers on that line, and you're going to have to make Jacob Voracek shoot more, or Sean Couturier become more of a shooter in that position.
All right, and one more thing that I did want to ask you about is the fact that Provorov, who I love, and I think is still flying under the radar a little bit as far as how good this young defenseman is, but he's also playing with Andrew McDonald. Is that something that you see continuing all season long?
I do. I see it continuing at least for a long period of time because Dave Haxtell likes having Provorov there with an experienced defenseman. They have so many kids on that blue line that you've got a Radko Gudas, a Brandon Manning, and Andrew McDonald to kind of mix and match with the kids. And I'm counting Shane Gostisbehere as a kid, even though it's his 3rd season in the league. But Provorov is a stud. Provorov's the guy who played very well against Alex Ovechkin last season. He has a potential of being an excellent two-way defenseman, not only being able to pile up points and score a little bit on the second power play unit, but also the potential to be a really, really good shutdown defenseman, even at age 20.
One of the big stories in the National Hockey League this week was the Vegas Golden Knights playing their home opener, and an emotional night. They put 5 goals on the board. They scored a bunch early on, and the party was going there in Vegas. And their hot start has been sort of a pleasant surprise this season as well. The Golden Knights, for everything that's gone on off the ice in Vegas and the sort of horrifying and tragic events that occurred there a couple of weeks back, it's been a nice little story, hasn't it? This strong start for an expansion team.
Definitely, and they're quick and they're fun to watch. And I don't know if this is sustainable. I still don't think Vegas is going to make the playoffs because even at the very least, James Neal is a very tradable commodity at the deadline, and you're going to count on Marc-Andre Fleury sometimes to make 40+ saves a game. But let's enjoy this. Let's have fun with this Vegas team right now because there are some young talented players. A guy like Nate Schmidt running the power play on this team, former Capitals defenseman. James Neal. We're going to see Vadim Shipachyov make his NHL debut very soon. Not exactly a young guy after playing several years in the KHL, but it's an intriguing team. They'll be fun to watch. And Marc-Andre Fleury, being the goaltender of the team, is going to keep the Golden Knights in games for a long time this season.
We've seen a lot of rookies get off to some pretty impressive starts this season. The New Jersey Devils, one of the really nice stories for them has been the Jesper Bratt the rookie, and him coming out, he's putting points up. Butcher's look good too. Sonny Milano for Columbus has been good. Alex DeBrincat had his first NHL goal against the Canadiens at the Bell Center the other night. How long do you think, in your opinion, does it take for you to sort of be sold and feel that this guy's not the next Fabian Brunstrom, but will in fact have a productive and remain a productive offensive player?
I think I'd like to see this for half a season before I start believing that. But it's interesting that this kid was a sixth-round pick and came out of nowhere because he was playing in the second Swedish league and not against top competition. But Nicholas Lidstrom was a guy like that in Sweden many, many years ago who kind of was a diamond in the rough. The Red Wings found, and this is something maybe that Ray Shero's staff in Jersey has found a gem of a player in Jesper Bratt and taken a spot in that lineup that we all thought Drew Stafford would fill at the second line right wing. But there are, even without the high-end talent, they don't have the Capitals level talent in terms of centers, especially with Travis Zajac hurt. But with Adam Henrique, Nico Hischier on that team, and even Marcus Johansson on the wing, there are enough playmakers to help a guy like Jesper Bratt along and help him become a better player as a rookie.
I mentioned this. We were talking to Sean Leahy in the last hour of the show, Stephen, but the fact that the Devils are an entertaining team to watch, at least they have been so far this year, when they've been anything but, and at least in my estimation, for as long as I can remember. It's weird to see this sort of high-flying, exciting team out of New Jersey, isn't it?
It's very weird. And even after Martin Brodeur left, and even after Lou Lamoriello left, we've seen the coaching changes. There has been this Devils identity, just like there's been in the Flyers kind of Broad Street Boys identity of the Devils being a boring hockey team. That's not this team anymore. John Hines has got them going, and certainly playing to the talent on the roster that you don't need to be a shutdown team. And guess what? The defensemen aren't good enough to be a shutdown team for the Devils right now. You have to fly, you have to go, and rely on some of that talent up front. And Corey Schneider is good enough that if these guys make mistakes and turn the puck over, he's able to make some big saves and make the unexpected saves. And it's going to be fun to watch the Devils. But this is not the trap left wing lock Devils anymore.
All right, one more for you here, and this is way out of left field, so bear with me here, okay? I saw this question asked on hockey Twitter, and this was sort of being beat around earlier this week. And the question was, comparing eras. We're in the midst of the Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby era, and they're still, I mean, we talked about it. Ovechkin's got 9 goals already this year. Sidney Crosby's still productive, but it's the McDavid and Matthews era that's starting. So which era do you think will be sort of remembered as the better one? The Ovechkin Crosby era or the McDavid Matthews era that's currently shaping up?
I'm gonna be a chicken, and I'm gonna answer half of this. I actually think it's the Crosby McDavid era, and because I think from the time McDavid got into the league for the next 7 or 8 years is Crosby versus McDavid, and these two guys that's going to be seen as the best. And that's nothing against Austin Matthews on the back end of that or Alex Ovechkin on the front end of that. But Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid are going to go down as 2 of the greatest 7 or 8 players in hockey all time. Alex Ovechkin probably is the greatest goal scorer, undoubtedly the greatest goal scorer of the generation, and one of the greatest goal scorers of all time. But I think that this Crosby-McDavid era we're in the middle of right now is going to be better than anything we've seen since Gretzky and Lemieux.
Well, it's a fun place to be there tonight for the Flyers and the Capitals for the home opener. I hope you enjoy it, Stephen, and I hope we can catch up with you again soon.
Thanks, Connor. Talk to you soon.
There is Stephen Wino. Geez, sounded like he was in a bit of a rush there at the end, eh? That's no worries here. I mean, there's work to be done. The puck drops probably about an hour from now. The Philadelphia Flyers and the New Jersey Devils. We've got a nice looking slate of games tonight in the National Hockey League, including the Philadelphia Flyers and the Washington Capitals was what I meant to say. I may have misspoke there a moment ago. The Leafs and the Canadiens is the game that's the puck's going to be dropping almost exactly 1 hour from now. A game you can listen to here on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio. It's Habs Leafs. It's rivalry night in the National Hockey League. I'm excited. Are you excited?
I'm very excited.
You sound excited. That's Laura Saba. I'm Conor McKenna. This is Hockey Primetime. Coming up next, let's talk to our friend Arpon Basu from the Athletic Montreal. They've got a great piece up there that we mentioned about Mike Babcock and Ray Shero. Let's talk a little bit about what they're up to there at the Athletic. It just launched a podcast. They're coming for you. This is Hockey Primetime. I'm Conor McKenna on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio, streaming live at hockeyprimetime.com and on Facebook Live and on Periscope. Get at us online.
All right, Arpin's there about 90 seconds.
Arpin's on the line, you said?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
No problem.
Arpin's on the line.
Was there some way we could watch TV while doing the show? You know, can we see? Is that sort of gap in the curtain?
What's on? Is it a game?
It's baseball. It's the playoffs. Houston, New York. Oh man, some great baseball playoffs this year.
Not so much for me.
Loved it. I hate the Red Sox so much.
I know.
It's crazy how much I hate them.
I know. And you know what sucks is that, I mean, they weren't that good, but they had a really good record. And there were a lot of, you know, it was kind of like last year with the Canadians. You're just like, they're playing, you know, they're not playing that great, but they're winning games. And then if certain things would go right, like you think that they could go really far in the playoffs, right? And then the playoffs happen and all those things go wrong.
It's a 5-game series, you know, it's like, it's so fast.
I know.
Like one thing goes wrong, it starts a quick, or like somebody goes cold and it's just like, it's over. It's so fast. It was a great series.
Yeah.
Three, 2, 1. Good evening. It's hockey nights in Canada and across North America. Montreal, Toronto at the Bell Centre tonight in Montreal. See if the Canadians can get things back on track. See if the Leafs can start a new streak after losing to the New Jersey Devils the other night. What a crazy game that was. All the Leafs games so far this year have been insane in terms of entertainment value. I don't know if any of them have been better than was it last Saturday? Was it the Rangers and the Toronto Maple Leafs, the 8-5 game or whatever? I mean, I think so. It's bananas. And that same night, of course, the Canadians were getting curb stomped by the Washington Capitals. After the show, Laura, last week, 7 o'clock, I ran up the street to go pick up, as I always do, a 6-pack of Kronenberg and a large bag of all-dressed Ruffles chips. And by the time I got back, it was already 2-0. Like it was blink and you missed it. I went to the kitchen to put the beers in the fridge. I came back, it was 3-0. So hopefully things go better for the Canadians tonight at the Bell Centre. With more on the Habs story and to go around the National Hockey League, a pleasure to welcome back to the show. He is with the Athletic Montreal, along with a great team, including Marc-Antoine Godin. His name is Arpin Basu. Arpin, good evening.
Good evening, Connor. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. All dressed Ruffles. You know, that's what it's all about. You know that.
Man, my mouth was watering as you were mentioning that. It sounds like such a delicacy right now. I just, you know.
Well, you have access to the $15 all-you-can-eat buffet at the Montreal Canadiens game, don't you?
I do, and I'm gonna eat it as soon as I'm done with you.
All right, good.
And I'm so excited to do it.
What's on the menu tonight? Have you checked it out?
I have. It's pulled pork sandwiches, which actually isn't half bad. Usually.
Not bad.
Yeah, nice butternut squash soup.
I always the soup is usually I'd say maybe the most consistently good thing at that buffet, and the worst day of the year is fish day. Any day that they do fish is just the whole media lounge smells. It's a terrible thing. But anyway, nobody cares about that. Let's talk about let's talk about important things. Arpin's on the line, and he is with the Athletic Montreal. You should subscribe. He's the editor-in-chief of the Athletic Montreal, and working with a team that includes a friend of the show, Marc Dumont, Marc-Antoine Godin, and Emna Chur. So, Arpin, tell me a little bit about this. And I know that you didn't do it, but it was a fantastic piece this week that Pierre LeBrun put together on Mike Babcock and Ray Shiro, and talking about coaching and managing people by two sort of hockey lifers and some extremely successful individuals in the sport.
Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of sort of the added value of having a guy like Pierre LeBrun. I mean, there's really basically no one else in the industry who would have gotten access to something like that, where like after the morning skate, before the day that the Devils beat the Maple Leafs, he just kind of got Ray Shiro and Mike Babcock to sit in the stands at the Air Canada Centre and allowed him to sort of record it and take part. And it was just this great free-flowing kind of discussion about about sharing information with other coaches and when you do it and when you don't. Just basically two hockey guys talking hockey. And it's just, you know, that's the kind of stuff you sort of get with us because at The Athletic, because, you know, not everyone has a guy like Pierre LeBrun, and not all writers have the liberty to do something like that and actually have the pull to get to kind of heavy hitters in the NHL to sit down for such a unique experience like that. So I thought it was really eye-opening, some of the stuff they said, just about sharing information and when they do it, when they don't, what works, what doesn't. It was, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you don't see every day. So I'd highly recommend going to read it.
Yeah, go check it out on the Athletic Hockey feed, and one of just many great things that is being put up there by a terrific team of writers, not just in the NHL, but around the world of sports. All right, Arpin, I'm going to tell you that I am extremely disappointed right now because I got really, really fired up for the debut tonight of David Schlemko. That I was told was going to come in, and he was sort of going to be the Messiah here. He was going to come in like a knight in shining armor. Yeah. And after he played for the Laval Rocket last night, Claude Julien announced earlier today that no, the Schlem Dog millionaire will not be playing tonight.
No, he won't. So we're going to have to wait at least another couple of days. And wouldn't even commit to him going to California, which was strange. And so, you know, the Canadians leave tomorrow morning for San Jose. They practice there Monday. They play on Tuesday. They play in LA on Wednesday and then in Anaheim on Friday. And so that's a long period of time. And he was asked if he was just going on that trip, and Claude Julien wouldn't commit to it. So, you know, he did play a professional hockey game last night with Laval, and apparently came out of it fine. He said he sort of suggested after the game that his conditioning's not quite where he needs it to be, which probably is why he's not playing tonight. But I'd be pretty stunned if he didn't go on the California trip. I mean, I think Claude was just kind of hedging his bets in case something happened where he wouldn't be able to come finally. And this is something he tends to do. It's just that what seems like an obvious bit of information that he could offer, he just sort of waits until it actually happens, and then he'll talk about it just so he doesn't paint himself into a corner. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when he does come back, though. I mean, you know, like Brandon Davidson and Jordy Ben are kind of, in a way, competing to see who's going to stay in the lineup when Schlemko comes back. So that's something to watch for tonight, because Davidson's been on a good little – he's only played 2 games, but in both games he looked really good. So we'll see if he can make it 3 in a row.
That was as good as he has looked, isn't it? I'd say overall, Absolutely. Going back to last year, like this was kind of what we were the more optimistic people were hoping for when they acquired him.
Yeah, and especially the last game. I think the first game he was just kind of trying to ease into it, and of course, you know, it was a blowout. And so, well, no, it wasn't a blowout. It was a game in New York. And so, I mean, but he played well enough, but you could tell that he was very conscious of not making any mistakes. And I thought the other night against Chicago, he was a lot more assertive. He was a lot more physical. He laid a couple of big hits. He made some, you know, strategic and as it turns out, good decisions in the offensive zone to pinch. Started taking a little bit of risk. And he talked about it quite openly today, how his confidence has just been a mess since the start of training camp. And how he's been fighting to get it back, and he's starting to feel like he's getting there. So, you know, I mean, if he can start, the Canadians need some defensemen not named Shea Weber and Victor Mete to kind of step up. And I include Carl Alzner and I include Jeff Petrie in that group as well. Their bottom 4 on defense has been a bit of a mess. So I'm pretty confident that Alzner and Petrie will figure it out, but they do need some guys on that bottom pair to sort of seize that opportunity and seize that spot. And Davidson seems to realize that and has done that so far over 2 games at least.
So yeah, that blue line, and there are certainly question marks. There's no question about it. And you know, I'm curious about what your feeling is on Jeff Petrie. I know it's not a big sample size, and Petrie's never been an overly productive player from an offensive standpoint, but he's a good NHL defenseman. He's got a long history of being a good player in this league for a long time. He has not looked very good to me so far this year, and I know I'm not the only one who feels that way. Is there any cause for concern for you with the way that Petrie's come out of the gates this year?
Well, yeah, I mean, you'd like for him to come out stronger, but one thing I've noticed about Jeff Petrie over his time in Montreal is that he's a guy who will play like 6 games where he lights out, and you think he's like one of the best defensemen in the league, and then he'll play like 4 games where he's just awful, and then he'll play 5 games where he's fantastic, and like there's no real middle ground with him. And so it seems like when he hits a rut, he hits it for a while, and then when he gets into a good run, he gets into that for a while, which isn't ideal because the coach never really knows what version of him you're going to get. But so far at the start of the season, you've gotten sort of the bad version. But at some point, based on his history here, I'm pretty confident he'll turn it around and he's going to string off, 2 weeks worth of games where you're going to think like he's lighting the world on fire. And just when you think he's turning into like some sort of an elite defenseman or at least a very good defenseman, he'll have some games like he's had so far this season. So it's an issue with him that I think has lasted prior to this season, where he goes into stretches where he just kind of loses it for a while, and then he finds it. And when he finds it in a big way.
Alex Galchenyuk said this morning that he is feeling better, and we'll see. I know that he was skating with Torrey Mitchell once again, just like he was in practice from Wednesday onward for the Canadiens. So Alex Galchenyuk skating on the fourth line. Alex Galchenyuk not on either power play unit in practice either, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about that. What's going on?
We don't know about that.
Okay.
I mean, that last bit we don't know about. I mean, it's they practiced. They did their power play extensively yesterday, and he wasn't at the practice. So
right,
it's hard to know which power play unit he's going to be on. They didn't run power play this morning, at least not what I noticed. And plus with Plekanec, if Plekanec is out, Plekanec was on that second unit. I'd have to imagine they have 4 forwards on the second unit. I can't imagine he wouldn't be one of them. But so far the top unit, it looks like it's going to be Mete and Weber with Pacioretty, Joy, and Lehkonen, which is their top line. So he's going back to 2 defensemen on that unit, which I like a lot. It's probably a good idea. But yeah, as far as power play goes, I'd be pretty stunned to not see him there.
What's going on with Galchenyuk in your estimation?
He hasn't been very good. I mean, let's be honest. It's just that, a lot of people haven't been very good, but he's, I think a lot of what Claude Julien says about him is correct, is that he's not producing scoring chances, unlike a lot of the other forwards who just aren't scoring, but they're getting chances, they're getting shots, they're getting a lot of things. Nothing really seems to happen with him when he's on the ice. But by the same token, I mean, you put him on a line with Philip Deneau and Andrew Shaw. When some people would say, if he was really a great player, he would make those players better and they would still look good. And, or you could also say that, maybe he's not that great of a player who makes everyone around him better. And maybe he needs to play with skilled players, which is kind of my thinking on him. And so, I would give him a shot on one of the top 2 lines or even the top line, play him at right wing with Joy and Pacioretty and see what he can do. Cause those 2 guys, other than that goal in the first game, haven't done anything. So, I don't think Claude Julien's wrong to sort of point him out as far as a guy who's not making anything happen on the ice. But in order to get him out of that, I don't think putting him on the fourth line is necessarily the solution.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with that the way that you're looking at it too. I'm wondering, do you think this is a marriage that works long term? He signs a 3-year contract, and I'm a little bit worried about him, and I'm with you. I'm not. It's always all or nothing, right? It's it's Michel Terrier's fault, or it's Alex Galchenyuk's fault. It's just I believe that there are a number of factors that are playing into the fact that things aren't working for Alex Galchenyuk, and the player himself certainly deserves his fair share of the blame or credit when things are going well or badly. But I'm just the longer this goes on with the way that he's taking a beating in the media, a lot of the fans seem to have their knives out for this guy as well. The organization certainly, in my eyes, hasn't exactly gone to bat for the kid, and I don't think they're super impressed with the way things have gone since he's been drafted. Do you think it works long term between the Habs and Galchenyuk?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know. I mean, I'm not willing to write him off, and I don't think the organization has written him off because, I mean, let's be honest. He's one of the most talented players on the team. That's no one would deny that. I think even Claude Julien, all sorts of people who wouldn't deny that. But I mean, he needs to play within a certain structure, which is something that this organization preaches very, very hard, and hasn't shown necessarily an ability to do that. Makes kind of the same mistakes over and over again. But the thing that I just wonder about him is just, if he had the organization has always sort of treated his development with a certain degree of doubt in his abilities. He played the wing forever because they doubted his ability to play center. When he played center, as soon as he made a couple of mistakes, he was back on the wing because ultimately they still doubted that he could play center. Finally, they announced he's going to play center. He does last season. Is tied for 11th in scoring when he busts his knee open or busts his knee not open, but he busts his knee in early December, and then comes back and it's clear that he's not quite right and that the knee is still bothering him. Doesn't produce, gets taken off center again. Terrien gets fired. Julien gets hired. The first thing he does is put him at center, lasts a few games, takes him off center again, And so, I mean, just think of the number of times this guy has been yo-yoed back and forth, position to position, line to line. You know, he never just seems to get a long-term vote of confidence from the organization. I think that would actually be a nice change of pace as far as this organization is concerned in dealing with this player. Is just letting him go out and play and sort of not having a consequence for every mistake he makes. Because right now, based on his history, he's in his 6th season in Montreal, which is incredible to think of. And throughout that entire time, it just seems like his mistakes have been the point of emphasis and not the positives that he brings to the team, which are several. When he's going, he's a very potent offensive player, and it just never seems to be the emphasis of the organization when they're thinking about him.
It really is. It's a fun talking point. He's a fascinating guy, and you know, I've marked to need
I'm
this.
tired of it, actually. To be honest with you, it's not a fun talking point. I feel like it's been so long that we're talking about the same thing, and it's just like, you know, it's.
Well, it's not the same thing, though. For the longest time, the talk was, you know, where does he play, center or wing? And Mark Bergevin has nipped that in the bud at training camp, while sort of I thought sort of throwing him under the bus in the process. But maybe he was trying to light a fire under him. Maybe he's trying to protect him and get everybody to shut up about whether he's going to play center or not. That's fine. But now it's just for me, it's more about like his long-term prospects with the team. It reminds me of I'm going to 2 examples that it reminds me of. It reminds me of Tyler Seguin in Boston, in that this was a player that was a team. They got Seguin, I know, because of the Leafs trade, right? The Bruins were already good, and so they add this high-end guy, this top 2 draft pick in the case of Seguin, and Galchenyuk, it's a top 3 pick. And the Canadians had that sort of one-off terrible season, the Randy Cunningworth year, that led to them being able to draft Alex Galchenyuk. And, you know, both of them, winger, center, questions off the ice, whatever. I'd even draw, honestly, comparison to Jonathan Drouin as well in Tampa, another player who was a high-end guy that was taken on a really good team. It's hard for these top guys to crack playoff caliber or maybe even Stanley Cup contending rosters in the case of Boston and Tampa. And you sort of see what happens. And in both those cases, those guys eventually ended up somewhere else. Tyler Seguin in Dallas, Jonathan Drouin now in Montreal. I just wonder if maybe this Galchenyuk thing is sort of going down the same path.
Well, and the Drouin thing, like if you're Alex Galchenyuk, right, and you see them go get Drouin, anoint him the number 1 center immediately, hand him this big long-term contract, everything that they've done with Jonathan Drouin without having seen him do anything for the Canadians. If you're Alex Galchenyuk and you see this, and you're a number 3 pick, he's a number 3 pick, you had issues away from the puck, you had issues, you know, carving out your spot in the lineup. Jonathan Drouin had the exact same thing happen to him in Tampa. He walks in here and is anointed as the next great Canadian star, and you're just sitting there and you're like, well, what about me? I mean, it's when you put yourself in his shoes and you see everything that happened with Jonathan Drouin at the start of the season, you got to think, like, how would he have seen that? How could he not have thought, why isn't this happening for me? Has the Canadians ever come out and has boldly stated that they're going to build around me the way they've said about Drouin, who had a lot of the same issues I did? I mean, it's hard not to think from his perspective that that's a raw deal. He's put in the time here. He's done everything that's been asked of him. You know, he's had his few screw-ups, what all young players do. And then a guy comes in who demanded a trade from his previous team, who didn't report to his AHL team, went through all that drama in Tampa, and comes in and is anointed the next one. And you gotta wonder if Galchenyuk looks at that and been like, well, what the hell? What am I? You know?
For sure. 100%. I agree. I don't know. Anyway, see, it's fun to talk about. Anyway, sorry for making you talk about it. Go enjoy your pulled pork sandwich. Thank you for making time for us, Arpin.
All right. My pleasure, man.
Have a and safe travels to California, my friend. He's going to California with the Canadians this week. The Athletic are going to have 2 guys on the road. Marc-Antoine Godin, the outstanding French, a Francophone and a French language writer, and Arpin Massu is going to be writing in English. And they're going to be covering the Canadians on the road for The Athletic. They've also got a podcast called The Athletic Support, a.k.a. Jockstrap. Yes, that's correct. That's the name of the podcast. Coming up right now, let's chat on the other side with Josh Cooper, who was announced a huge piece of news in his life, and one of my favorite people to talk with. We'll be chatting with him and catching up with him for the first time this season. That's Josh Cooper joining Hockey Primetime next on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio and streaming live at hockeyprimetime.com.
Okay, Josh is on there.
So like for 10 out of 24 hours I was watching that show. And like I slept, you know.
Hey, Josh is on the line.
Awesome, thanks.
No problem.
People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a warm-hearted person who loved me till the end. People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a one-boy cuddly toy, my up, my down, my pride and joy. People, let me tell you about him. So much fun.
Oh yes, you know what that music means. Is that Josh Cooper's music? He's back on the show. And it is a pleasure to welcome him back in. One of my favorite people to talk hockey with. A long time with Yahoo Sports covering the National Hockey League. Can read his work now with ESPN, and they're expanding NHL coverage. Josh Cooper, how you doing, bud?
You know, I have a confession to make, Connor. We just had a kid 2 weeks ago, and we actually named him Connor.
No, you didn't.
After you. Absolutely not. His name is not Connor. It's actually Ethan. But I wanted to see if I could get you on that.
I knew you weren't. I knew it wasn't true, but it was definitely funny. I mean, that would have been the most ridiculous thing ever. You know, I mean, it would have been one thing because Connor's become in my lifetime. Like when I was a kid, there was no Connor, so I was the only Connor. But now there's like, you know, we got Connors all over the place. Conor McGregor, Connor McDavid, and then other people that aren't even famous pro athletes that are named Connor. But it used to be kind of rare and exciting to be Connor. Now it's the worst, especially because Connor McDavid spells his name wrong. And as a result of that, everybody spells my name wrong now. I find it incredibly annoying. But enough about me. Let's talk about you. You just dropped a bombshell. You've added a new member to your family, Ethan. Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear him in the background. He's kind of been melting down a little bit today. It's been so awesome. I mean, I've enjoyed it more than I ever thought I would. Keeps me on my toes, and can't wait to take him to his first hockey game. Though I'm trying to figure out who he's going to root for. We live in LA. You obviously have the Ducks and you have the Kings. The problem is that his grandfather in New York is like a diehard Rangers fan, and I feel like he's already trying to just indoctrinate him in regards to like being a Rangers fan. So I don't really know where that's going to go, but I mean, right now the Rangers are like 1-4, and I just don't want my kid to root for teams that aren't doing very well. So we'll see how it goes.
You can only protect them for so long, though, Josh. It's you know, and that's funny because I know in my family, whenever a new baby is born, inevitably different family members send gear from different teams to try to sort of win the kid over to their side. So I got a lot of Leafs fans in my family. There's a lot of Canadians fans. I got Canadians fans living in Toronto, and all the Toronto people trying to indoctrinate their kids to be Leafs fans. And honestly, it sounds like a winning idea at this point with the way things are going for the Leafs. But we're sending Montreal gear down the 401 to Toronto all the time, and I don't know, maybe we'll have to send maybe we can send some Habs gear down to Los Angeles for little Ethan. See if we can win him over. It is.
It's a beautiful logo. He's gonna get to choose whatever he wants to choose. At the end of the day, my only request is that I want him to at least give the Mets a shot in the National League. That's all I want. everything else, whatever. I'm sure he'll end up being a Kings or Ducks fan. I'm sure he'll like the Lakers. I'm sure he'll like hopefully the Rams. I don't really want to. The Chargers may move in like a year, so I don't need him to kind of jump on that. But the Mets. The Habs gear is beautiful. It would be cool to see him in that. I want him to choose whatever team he wants, but I just want him to enjoy the game. I just want him to like the game as much as I have, or as throughout my life, and maybe it'll give back to him the way it's given back to me. And I know that's super sappy, but it's the truth, and it's a fun game, and it's a good product, and I hope he gets into it.
That is a nice thing. All right, and who knows? Yeah, you know what, Josh, the Mets, I'm sure will have things figured out by the time he's like university age. I'm sure the Mets will have that organization back on track after the comic book nightmare season that they just had. But that's for. I paid no attention. What season?
Good.
Yeah. Well, you had you had other important things going on in your life. So let's talk. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your piece on John Chayka, the young general manager of the Arizona Coyotes. So what was it like? Let's start here. What's he like?
He is a hockey guy, and that was my number one takeaway, and I hope it came across in the piece. I tried to point that out. So John Chayka played junior hockey in Canada and was actually drafted to play major junior, but I'm pretty sure it was a back injury, ended his career before he could. And so then he just hit the books and got some degrees and ended up becoming kind of a stat head, so to speak. But he's not this guy who people kind of pin him as, oh, he's a stat geek, he's a computer boy, he just sits behind his laptop and makes moves. No, I mean, that's not the case at all. He very much speaks the language. He knows what he's looking for. He was seeing things when I was watching him that Steve Sullivan was sitting next to me one spot over in the same press box, and Steve Sullivan played over 1,000 games. I mean, they were both seeing the same thing simultaneously and talking about it. And I think that was the biggest takeaway I had, was that this is a guy who's really smart and understands the business of hockey and understands the statistics of hockey, but also played the game. He's not someone who just tries to figure out the way the game is played through science and through computers. He gets it, and he also has some hockey people in the organization. For example, again, I mentioned Steve Sullivan, a guy who played over 1,000 games. And one of the things that I brought up in the story was when there was a slashing penalty called, I think it was on Christian Fischer, and Chayka said, you can't do that. And Sullivan goes, yeah, you can't do it, but it feels so natural to do it. And to me, that was just kind of a real hockey moment right there, because if you're playing in the game, and that's something that, again, I mean, the NHL has tried to weed out these little flashes on the hands after everything that happened last year in the playoffs with a few players. But, it feels natural to do it. And I didn't get any sense that Chayka disagreed with him, because he played the game and he understands it. So that was really the big takeaway I had from Chayka and sitting with him. And he's a bit of a different bird, but in a good way. And I don't think he gets hockey, but he also gets kind of the corporate side and the computer side and the statistical side of things. And I mean, yeah, things still have yet to work out with him in Arizona, but I think they will eventually. But I think part of it really, it does in some respects have to do with some of the pieces he was handed there. And this is the first time, I think, since I guess he's been there, that he has really a shot to build his team. And yeah, it hasn't gone super well through the first few games of the season, but I think he's building to that. And there are some issues there, and I think he's trying to figure out how to kind of wade through them, because he wasn't exactly he was given a lot of good prospects, but he wasn't given a tremendously great prospect to sort of build around. I think that's the issue you're seeing there right now.
Yeah, and I guess they might have hoped that that Dylan Strome would be going, and that Antti Ranta and Derek Stepan would seamlessly fit in and all of a sudden turn that organization around. It's too early to say, I think, here, but I do like the way the team is going. And another anecdote that I must say that I enjoyed from your piece, Josh, was that very early on, you mentioned the fact that he prefers mint tea to coffee. So he's a tea aficionado, just like you. You guys did you hit it off on that note right off the bat?
I've actually swapped. I'm more into ever since I had the kid. I'm more into coffee now. It just has to happen. But we actually but in the press box, so I am a tea drinker more than a coffee drinker, just because I don't. I'm like Chaika. It hypes you up to a degree to where you can't calm down when you have to. And he likes that. And he was drinking the BioSteel. I'm not trying to plug it. It's what he said he was drinking. And he basically you've been around hockey people, Connor, long enough to know it's the biggest coffee culture I've ever seen. And you go to a Starbucks line at a team hotel before a game, it's like out the door with hockey players. It's nuts. And this is a guy who treats his body well. I'm pretty sure I remember when I did a story on him for Puck Daddy last year. He was talking about how he was getting up at like 5 a.m. to go work out and get the day rocking. And, he takes care of himself, and he really wants to be the best, and he wants to be healthy. It's a long season, and it's a grind. And even though a lot of these guys do make pretty good salaries, GMs, so to say, it's still, you have to take care of yourself or else it'll beat you down. And yeah, he's not as much of a coffee drinker as a lot of other guys. You see a lot of coffee in that press box generally.
And and you go sort of to pains to point out, and I know you did right off the top, that this is a guy who maybe has a reputation as a stats whiz number cruncher that is probably far less accurate of a descriptor than just he's a hockey guy, as you said off the top there. I do, and one of the things that fascinated me about it, though, and we saw this sort of weird thing play out with Dave Tippett in Arizona, and there was the Shane Doan thing there too. Like, he made some awkward decisions and some massive decisions there over the course of this last offseason. But when he came in as the youngest general manager in league history last year, will this sort of old school, I don't know if crotchety is the right word, but the general managers fraternity, famously tight-knit, sort of old school hockey guys, embrace this guy, and how might it affect his ability to do his job? I guess those questions were answered here in the offseason. I mean, he was able to make significant moves and wheel and deal with a number of teams, right?
Well, one of the things I actually asked him, it didn't make it into the story, because I actually got to sit with him for about 30 or 40 minutes before we went in the press box and just we're on the record chatting. And some of it made it in, not everything. But one of the things, so he got married last summer, and I asked him what was more difficult, planning a wedding or informing Shane Doan that the Coyotes didn't want him anymore. And he was upfront over the fact that they needed to go in a different direction, and I think they had to. I mean, you look at just the fact that Dave Tippett had been there for a long time, and yeah, he's a very well-respected coach, and a lot of people like him. Well, everyone's got an expiration date, and it's hard to just continuously putting in the same coach who hasn't made the playoffs in X amount of years. And it's not to say it's Tippett's fault. I mean, there's a lot of things out of control, but you had to make a change there. I think Shane Doan, when you're looking at the way the league is going, you can't have a guy who's 40 years old on your roster making the type of money that it sounded like Shane Doan wanted to make. I mean, the only guy that seems to really be able to do that is Jaromir Jagr, but it's a hard thing to do to have a player eat up that type of salary. He made some hard decisions. And I mean, for me, I mean, and not just because I got to know John Chaika sitting with him, like in regards to wanting the Coyotes to succeed, talking to him, seeing the moves they made, I truly believe they made this team better. And that's what's made this start so strangely disappointing and kind of weird for me, because, or at least from what I could see, because I thought they would be better off the hop, because I liked the moves that they made. I think they did get better. And I do think John Chaika knows what he's doing there, but the proof is you have to have success. It's a bottom line business. And here they
we should break soon.
Terrible start. And you're sitting there kind of wondering, when's it going to turn around? And you mentioned the Strome thing with him getting sent down to Tucson, and you just have to wonder when it's going to happen. I mean, personally, I do think Chaika knows what he's doing in terms of being able to try to figure out different ways to turn this team around. But until it happens, I think there still will be some questions. But after spending some time with him and, again, seeing the moves he made, I have to be a believer. I think he does know what he's doing, but it may just take a little longer than any of us expected.
Josh, thank you for your time. As always, I really do appreciate it.
No worries. Anytime, Connor.
Cheers. That is Josh Cooper. You read his piece on John Chaika at the ESPN NHL page some big time announcements there the last little while, including Greg Wyshynski joining ESPN's coverage of the National Hockey League, along with Emily Kaplan, who's certainly a friend of the show and somebody who's doing great over there as well. So after really sort of a dark period there for ESPN hockey, they've got some really good people there, which is nice to see. Coming up next, let's wrap things up. We'll look at some of the games tonight. Some bad teams that are off to good starts, some good teams that are off to bad starts. Let's talk about it and finish things off next. This is Hockey Primetime here on SiriusXM, NHL Network Radio, and streaming live at hockeyprimetime.com.
So you have like 3 minutes to wrap?
Verlander's throwing a complete game out there. You never see that anymore.
So you have like 3 minutes?
Perfect. Oh, I thought it was 16. It's 14? Did I screw that up? I thought the Canadians had beaten them 16 straight times, but apparently it's 14. Wow. Three, two, one. All right, last few minutes of the show. This is Hockey Primetime. This is the part of the show where I correct any mistakes I may have made. No, there's no time. I don't have enough time to do that right now. But I will say this. I said it was 16 in a row for Montreal against Toronto. I guess I was wrong. I'm looking at Sean Farrell's game preview at NHL.com, and it actually, he says 14 in a row. They're looking for their 15th straight win against the Leafs when the two teams meet a few moments from now in the Bell Center here in Montreal. The Leafs' last victory against the Habs was a 5-3 win at the ACC back on January of 2014, January 18th, 2014. So it's been a while.
I feel like I don't even remember what it was like in January of 2014. I don't remember what the world was like.
I don't know. I might want to say 2014, that might have been the game that, and it's just the both teams have changed so much since then. I think that might have been the game where Rene Bourque got suckered by Colton Orr. Although you could correct me if I'm wrong. Carey Price's numbers against the Leafs. He's 11-0 with a 1.88 goals against average and a 944 save percentage in his past 11 games against Toronto. So he's won 11 straight against the Leafs. But the Habs are off to a 1-3 start. It's their first 1-3 start since back in 2000-2001. The Canadians have not yet scored on the power play. They've got Victor Mete on the first power play unit now, trying something new. So It should be a fun game. Austin Matthews on 6 points on his current 4-game point streak. He's got 3 points in 4 games against the Canadians. Only 1 goal in 4 games for Matthews in his career against the Habs. So we'll see if he can maybe get that going. He's got everything else going for him right now. Amazing to see that story this week. Matthews, maybe $13.5 million. Hey, I mean, that's how it works, right? Those contracts that come out as a percentage of the cap space that a team has. So if he signs a new contract next year, the salary cap presumably will go up a couple of $1 million, and he'd be entitled to a certain slice of the pie. And don't forget that Connor McDavid took a bit of a discount at the last second so that he could be surrounded by some better players. So if that's the comparable, we'll see. But a lot of fun, and looking forward to the Canadians and the Leafs. That's what's coming up next. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We'll be back with you next week. Enjoy the games tonight and have a great weekend.